I paid my parents $700 every week to help take care of my daughter while I worked. I thought it was a blessing, until they ignored her birthday like she didn't exist. When I asked why, I learned the ugliest truth a daughter could ever hear. Stay with me while I tell you everything that happened. If my story touches your heart, please don't forget to show some love, like share, or just let someone know they're not alone in what they're going through. My name is Zahira Cole. I'm 28, a single mom, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I work full-time as a medical billing specialist, spending most of my days in front of computer screens and phone calls. My little girl, Amari, is 6 years old, smart, funny, and the light of my life. After my divorce, it was just the two of us. My parents, Clarence and Naomi, offered to help by watching Amari while I worked. They said retirement hadn't been easy, and bills were stacking up. I understood. I wanted to help them the way they'd helped me growing up. So, I offered to pay them $700 every week to take care of Amari during the day. My mom looked surprised at first, but then smiled. "You've grown into a responsible woman," she said. My dad nodded proudly. For months, everything seemed perfect. Amari loved being with her grandparents. They'd send me pictures of her playing in the backyard, coloring, or baking cookies. I felt lucky, like I had the best of both worlds. A stable job and my daughter surrounded by family. I told my coworkers how grateful I was, how not everyone had parents willing to help like that. But slowly, small things began to change. I started noticing little details that didn't sit right. Amari's clothes often smelled faintly of cigarettes, even though my parents had promised they quit years ago. When I asked her about it, she said, "Grandpa smokes on the porch sometimes, but he says it's our secret." Another time, I brought cupcakes over on a Sunday and Amari whispered, "Grandma doesn't like cake anymore. She says it's for lazy people." That one made me pause. My mom used to bake cakes every weekend when I was a kid. She'd hum gospel songs while stirring the batter. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just tired or moody. Still, something in my gut started to twist. There was a coldness in the air whenever I stopped by too long, like I was intruding. My parents would exchange glances, quick and unreadable. I kept telling myself not to overthink. They were my parents. They raised me, loved me, and now they were helping me raise Amari. I told myself everything was fine. But deep down, I could feel it, something was shifting. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know how bad it was going to get. Amari's 7th birthday was supposed to be special. I'd planned it for weeks, even though work had been crazy. I bought her favorite pink balloons, a little crown, and wrapped her gifts in sparkly paper. The night before, I dropped everything off at my parents' house. The decorations, the presents, and a small cake I had baked myself. My shift at work started early the next morning, so I asked my mom if they could celebrate with Amari while I was gone. She nodded but didn't say much. I took that as a yes and left, excited to see pictures later. All day at work, I kept checking my phone. I expected photos, maybe Amari blowing out candles, or my parents smiling beside her. But there was nothing. No texts, no calls, no missed messages. Still, I told myself they were probably busy celebrating. When I finally got off work, I stopped at a store to grab some ice cream and drove straight to their house. My heart was light. I couldn't wait to see Amari's happy face. I even rehearsed what I'd say when I walked in. "How's my birthday, girl?" But the moment I opened the door, everything inside me froze. The house was quiet. No decorations. No smell of cake. No sign of a party at all. Amari was sitting on the living room floor with her coloring book, quietly filling in the lines with pink and blue crayons. I looked around, confused. "Baby, where's your cake? Didn't Grandma and Grandpa help you celebrate?" She didn't look up. Her little voice was soft, almost embarrassed. "Grandma said birthdays are for people who earn it." For a second, I didn't understand. My mind went blank. Then her words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Earn it," I repeated. Amari just shrugged, her eyes downcast. I turned toward the kitchen, where my dad was sitting in his recliner watching TV, a plate of half-eaten food beside him. "Dad, what's going on? Why didn't you do anything for her birthday?" He didn't even look away from the screen. "You spoil that girl too much, Zahira. We're teaching her gratitude." I stood there, my throat tightening. "She's 7, I said quietly. "She's just a child." My mom walked out from the hallway then, folding laundry like nothing was wrong. "You work too much," she said flatly. "She needs to learn life isn't all cake and presents." I couldn't even respond. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to ask them how they could be so cruel. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath, walked over to Amari, and helped her gather her things. As we walked out, she looked up at me and whispered, "It's okay, Mommy. Maybe next year they'll like me again." That broke me. I smiled for her sake, but inside I was crumbling. I held her tight, drove home in silence, and knew something in me had changed forever. The next morning, I woke up with a tightness in my chest that wouldn't go away. I couldn't stop thinking about Amari's face, the way she had said, "Maybe next year they'll like me again." I knew I couldn't just let it go. I needed answers. So after dropping Amari off at school, I drove straight to my parents' house. My mom was in the kitchen, pouring herself coffee, and my dad was reading the newspaper like any other day. I stood there for a moment, staring at them, trying to understand how the same people who raised me could do that to my daughter. "Mom," I said quietly, "we need to talk." Naomi didn't look up. "About what?" she said, her tone sharp. "About yesterday," I replied. "About Amari's birthday. Why did you ignore her like that? I left you everything you needed, the cake, the gifts, the decorations." She finally turned toward me, her face cold. "You think money means you get to control how we raise her?" she snapped. I blinked, confused. "Control? Mom, I'm not trying to control anyone. I just wanted her to feel loved. I pay you $700 every week to take care of her, not to treat her like she's done something wrong." Her voice rose. "We don't need your money thrown in our faces, Zahira." Before I could respond, my dad folded his newspaper and muttered, "We don't need your charity." I just stared at him. "Charity? You both asked for the money. You said you needed help with bills, and I was happy to do it. This isn't charity, it's trust. It's family." My mom scoffed. "Family doesn't keep score." I felt my throat tighten. "Family also doesn't hurt a child to prove a point," I said softly. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence between us was thick, heavy, and full of things we weren't saying. Finally, my mom turned away, muttering something about me being too sensitive, and my dad went back to pretending to read his paper. When I got home that night, Amari was sitting at the kitchen table coloring again. She looked up and asked, "Mommy, are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" "Why would you say that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shrugged. "Grandma said you're selfish. Grandpa said we're a burden sometimes." My stomach dropped. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. My own parents were poisoning my daughter's mind against me. Later that night, I called my best friend, Talia Bryant. She listened quietly as I cried through the story. Talia's voice was firm but kind. "Z, something's not right. You need to find out what's really going on. They're not just being strict, they're trying to tear you down." Her words lingered long after the call ended. Deep down, I already knew she was right. Something darker was hiding behind their smiles. That night, after putting Amari to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a stack of receipts. Something inside me wouldn't rest. I needed to understand what was really happening. I opened my bank app and started scrolling through the last few months of transactions. My eyes widened as I went down the list. The weekly $700 transfers to my parents, plus several extra payments labeled grocery money, bills, and emergencies. I added them up and froze. Over $3,000. In just 2 months. My heart began to pound. My mom had always said they were struggling, that groceries had gotten more expensive, that retirement didn't stretch as far as it used to. I believed her every time. But the more I looked, the less it made sense. They lived in the same paid-off house, had no car payments, and my dad still got his pension check. So where was the money going? The next day, I left work early and drove to their house. I didn't tell them I was coming. When I walked in, my mom was sitting in a brand new leather recliner, one I definitely hadn't seen before. My dad was talking about some cruise they were planning with his old coworkers. My stomach turned. "Mom," I said quietly, "we need to talk." She looked up, surprised. "What about?" "About the money. The extra money I've been sending. Over $3,000 in 2 months. You said it was for groceries." Her face hardened instantly. "So you're keeping tabs now," she snapped. "I just want to understand," I said, trying to stay calm. "You said you needed help, but I'm seeing new furniture, new clothes, and a vacation planned. What's going on?" Naomi let out a dry laugh, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "You think you're the first in this family to pay for help. You owe us for raising you, Zahira. For every night we stayed up, for every meal you ever ate under this roof." I stared at her, stunned. "You think I owe you for being my parents?" She shrugged. "We did our job. Now it's your turn to do yours." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those weeks, I thought I was helping them stay afloat, but they'd been using me. And worse, they'd been neglecting Amari. When I asked where she'd been the previous Thursday, my mom hesitated before saying they had to run errands. Later, Amari told me she'd been alone for hours, sitting in front of the TV until it got dark. That broke something inside me. All the love, all the guilt, all the loyalty I had clung to, it started to crumble. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the woman who had taught me right from wrong, and realized she didn't believe in either anymore. By the time I left that house, the sadness was gone. Only quiet fury remained. It was a Saturday afternoon when I decided to stop by my parents' house without calling first. Something had been bothering me for days, a feeling I couldn't shake. I told myself it was just worry, that maybe I was being too suspicious, but deep down, I already knew I needed to see for myself. When I pulled into the driveway, everything was quiet. No laughter, no cartoons playing inside, not even the sound of movement. I walked to the backyard and froze. Amari was sitting on the grass, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaking down her face. Her small pink backpack sat beside her, half open, with crayons spilling out. My heart dropped. I rushed to her and knelt down. "Baby, what's wrong? Where's Grandma and Grandpa?" She sniffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Grandma left. Grandpa's sleeping. I was waiting for you." My stomach twisted. I pulled her into my arms, feeling how cold her hands were. "You've been out here alone?" She nodded, whispering. I didn't want to go inside. "It smells bad." I stood up, holding her hand, and walked toward the back door. The moment I opened it, the smell hit me, alcohol and stale air. The living room was dim, the curtains half drawn. My father was slumped in his recliner, snoring loudly, an empty bottle resting on the table beside him. On the counter, I saw the grocery bags I had dropped off just yesterday, still unopened. The milk was warm, the fruit had started to wilt. I stared at it, my anger bubbling beneath my skin. "Where's Grandma?" I asked quietly, even though I already knew I wouldn't get an answer from him. Amari hesitated, looking down. "She said she was going to the store, but she left a long time ago." She said, her voice broke a little. "She said you're paying her because you're not a real mother." For a moment, the world went silent. I couldn't breathe. My hands started trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of those words. I crouched down to meet Amari's eyes. "Listen to me, sweetheart," I said softly, holding her face in my hands. "That's not true. I love you more than anything. You hear me? More than anything." She nodded, but her eyes still looked hurt and confused. I stood up and began packing her things, her clothes, her school bag, her favorite stuffed bunny. I didn't care if my parents saw me or not. I wasn't leaving her there another minute. As I zipped up her bag, my dad stirred awake, blinking blearily. "What are you doing?" he grumbled. "I'm taking my daughter home," I said flatly. "You're overreacting," he mumbled, waving his hand lazily before dozing off again. I didn't answer. I took Amari's hand, walked out the door, and didn't look back. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but one thing was clear. I was done. Done being their wallet, their excuse, their daughter for hire. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. After the backyard incident, I knew I couldn't go back. The next week, I stopped sending the $700 payments. I drafted a short, firm message to my parents. "I'll be finding other childcare for Amari. Please do not contact me regarding money or care arrangements. I'll let you know if we need anything else." Hitting send, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. For days, there was silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I hoped they'd reflect, maybe realize what they had done. Instead, a few days later, there was a loud, angry knock at my apartment door. My heart sank as I opened it to find Naomi standing there, her face red and furious, arms crossed like a storm about to strike. "You're cutting off your family?" she shouted, her voice echoing in the small hallway. I took a deep breath and stepped back, keeping calm. "Mom, we're done with this arrangement. Amari and I need stability, not neglect." Her eyes narrowed, and before I could react, she slapped me across the face. The sting burned, but worse was the anger and contempt in her gaze. "You think you're better than us now," she screamed, her voice shaking. I stepped back, my hand instinctively touching my cheek. My mind raced, but I forced myself to stay composed. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Slowly, I closed the door, turning the key and hearing the click lock behind me. The adrenaline surged, but I felt a weight lifting too. The first real act of protecting myself and my daughter. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around Amari, who had been watching from the couch, wide-eyed and frightened. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "We're done begging for love. From anyone who doesn't see how much you mean." Her little arms clung to me tightly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a small flicker of safety for both of us. That night, I called Talia, my best friend and confidant. When she arrived, I barely held myself together. I told her everything: the backyard, the groceries, the insults, the slap. The tears flowed freely, a mix of anger, hurt, and exhaustion. Talia held my hand and didn't speak at first, just letting me unload. Finally, she said softly, "Z, your parents never saw you as a daughter." "Not really. They saw a wallet, a helper, someone to use. And I'm so sorry, but you've been trying to buy their love for too long." I nodded, feeling the truth hit me harder than any slap or insult ever had. Everything finally made sense: the neglect, the bitterness, the resentment toward my success. My heart ached, but I also felt something new: clarity. For years, I had tried to be a good daughter, to give and trust, and it had been met with exploitation and cruelty. Sitting there with Talia, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. I was broken, yes, but also awakened. I knew one thing with certainty: I would never let anyone, not even my parents, hurt Amari or me again. We were done begging. We were done hoping for love that would never come. And from that moment, a quiet determination settled inside me, stronger than fear or grief. We would survive, and we would thrive on our own terms. A week after cutting off the payments, my phone rang. It was Aunt Ruthie. I picked up, expecting a friendly hello, but her voice was trembling, full of tears. "See what's going on? Mom said you've abandoned us. She says you've been taking money and hiding it from the family." "I don't understand." I froze. My stomach sank and anger boiled under my skin. They were twisting the story, turning the victim into the villain. My own parents were painting me as the greedy one, while they were the ones who neglected and used my daughter. I sat down on the couch, holding the phone tightly. "Aunt Ruthie, listen to me carefully," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Everything they're saying is a lie. I've been paying them for months, every single week. I can prove it." Ruthie sniffled. I don't know what to believe. Naomi said you stole from them. She said you owe them for everything." I hung up, my jaw tight. That was it. I couldn't let them keep twisting the truth. If the family believed them, nothing I said alone would matter. I had to show the evidence. Not yell, not argue, just show the facts. I spent the next few hours gathering everything. Bank statements, text messages, receipts for the groceries, screenshots of conversations about payments. Everything that proved how much money I had sent and what it had been for. Every dollar intended for Amari's care, every extra grocery payment they'd requested. It was all documented. My hands shook as I stacked the papers neatly, knowing the moment of truth was coming. I decided on a family dinner. I sent out invites to Ruthie, a few cousins, and other relatives I trusted would come. I framed it casually, a dinner to clear the air and reconnect. I didn't say why, not yet. My parents, predictably, accepted eagerly. I could almost hear Naomi imagining how she'd spin the story. The night before the dinner, I went over everything again. I rehearsed calmly, laying out the evidence, piece by piece, without yelling or losing control. I wanted the truth to hit hard because of its clarity, not my anger. I didn't need theatrics. I needed facts. That evening, as I set the table and arranged the papers in neat stacks, I felt a strange mix of nerves and satisfaction. The house smelled faintly of roasted chicken and baked bread, the usual comfort of a family meal. But this time, it wasn't about comfort. It was about justice, quiet and precise. Amari was playing in the living room, unaware of the tension, and I smiled at her, feeling protective and strong. I glanced at the door, knowing Naomi and Clarence would walk in any minute, expecting the usual obedience, the usual quiet compliance. They had no idea what was coming. I sat down, took a deep breath, and waited. The stage was set. Tonight, the truth would speak louder than their lies. And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of control I hadn't had in years. This was my quiet revenge. Not angry shouting, not confrontations, but undeniable proof. Tonight, everything would change. The night of the dinner arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach, mixed with a strange sense of calm. Naomi and Clarence arrived first, smiling warmly, pretending like everything was fine. Their fake cheerfulness made my skin crawl. I guided them to the dining room, keeping my own expression neutral. Amari sat beside me, quietly drawing on a notepad, unaware of the tension in the air. Relatives trickled in, chatting lightly, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Ruthie looked nervous, glancing between Naomi and me, probably sensing something was off. The table was set with dishes everyone would later dig into, but for me, the food was secondary. Tonight was about truth. Tonight was about exposing the lies. As everyone began eating, I calmly reached into the stack of papers I had prepared, sliding the neatly printed bank statements, receipts, and text messages across the center of the table. The room quieted immediately. I took a deep breath. "This is what I paid you, every week, for my daughter's care," I said, my voice steady. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just let the words hang in the air. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Ruthie gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. A cousin muttered, barely above a whisper, "You said she never helped." Naomi's face went pale, her smile faltering. She opened her mouth, trying to spin something, anything, to regain control. "Zahira, that's not how it happened." I cut her off, my voice firm. "You forgot her birthday because you were on a casino trip. With my money." The words hit harder than I expected. Forks clattered onto plates, and the cheerful chatter evaporated. Eyes widened around the table. The betrayal that had been hidden behind smiles, excuses, and fake gratitude was laid bare for everyone to see. Clarence opened his mouth, stammering, That's not fair." I shook my head slowly, feeling the weight of years of manipulation and lies finally lift. "You raised me to believe family was sacred," I said, standing now, letting my presence fill the room. "Now I know it was just business. You saw me, my daughter, and my love for her as a source of income, not something precious. Everything else was secondary. Your greed, your selfishness, that's what I'm seeing tonight, and I won't let it continue." The table went completely silent. Even Naomi and Clarence, who had always tried to command attention, seemed small, cornered, and exposed. I could feel the relatives' eyes on them, disbelief and shock replacing the warmth and trust they had once held. Amari looked up at me, confused but sensing my strength. I reached over and held her hand. In that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval, their fake smiles, or their love anymore. I had done what I came to do. The truth was out, and it was undeniable. For the first time in years, I felt in control. The air was heavy with confrontation, but it was calm, factual, and final. Tonight, the betrayal could no longer hide behind lies. And for the first time, I could breathe. The night of the dinner, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat on the couch with Amari curled up beside me. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The truth had been laid bare, the lies exposed, and now it was time to let the dust settle. I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't go back. I stopped answering calls from my parents entirely. Naomi left voicemails, each one dripping with guilt trips and half-hearted apologies, trying to twist the story back in her favor. "Zahira, I'm your mother. We did everything for you," she would say, each word designed to make me doubt myself. I didn't respond. Clarence, as usual, stayed silent, refusing even a single attempt at reconciliation. The relatives who had attended the dinner didn't stay out of my life entirely, but their reactions were telling. Some sided with Naomi and Clarence initially, confused or shocked by the revelation, but over time, many of them began to see the truth. Aunts, uncles, cousins, some stopped visiting altogether, while others offered quiet support, checking in to see if Amari and I were okay. It was strange to watch the shift in our family dynamics, seeing the people who mattered most either drift away or finally understand. I started therapy a few weeks later. Sitting across from a counselor, I finally allowed myself to unravel all the emotions I had buried. The betrayal, the anger, the grief, and the guilt that had weighed so heavily for years. I cried for the mother I had hoped for the family I had believed in, and for the little girl who had been hurt by people she should have been able to trust. Each session helped me untangle the knots inside me, giving me the tools to rebuild a sense of peace and security for Amari. Yet even with therapy and support, a lingering question haunted me. Was I ever really loved, or was I just used? The thought would creep in at unexpected moments, when I folded laundry, helped Amari with homework, or cooked dinner. I hated that question, hated that it lingered, but I couldn't shake it. I knew my parents' love had always been conditional, tied to what I could give them rather than who I was. And still, amidst the grief, there was liberation. I realized I was finally free from the constant manipulation, free from the expectation that I would sacrifice my daughter's happiness for the sake of maintaining appearances. I could breathe without the weight of deceit pressing down on me. I could make decisions solely for Amari and myself without fear of retribution or guilt. Amari, too, began to heal. We developed new routines, quiet mornings, afternoons spent in the park, bedtime stories that didn't include lessons on gratitude or obedience, only love and imagination. Watching her smile without fear or hesitation became my greatest solace, a reminder that despite everything, we were safe and together. The pain of betrayal remained, a shadow in the corners of my mind, but I carried it with the knowledge that I had survived. I had reclaimed my life and my daughter's. And for the first time in years, I felt a quiet, steady strength, grief and liberation intertwined, guiding us forward, one day at a time. Months had passed since I'd cut my parents out of our lives, and slowly, a new rhythm settled over our little world. Mornings were calm. Amari would hop out of bed, brushing her teeth with a hum, while I brewed coffee in the kitchen. We laughed over pancakes, shared stories from our days, and for the first time in years, the air wasn't thick with tension or resentment. It was peaceful, ordinary, and perfect in its simplicity. Talia had been my anchor through it all. She'd stayed close, offering support, advice, and an honest perspective when I felt lost. One day, over coffee, she suggested I start a small daycare from home. "You've been through so much, Z," she said gently. "You already know how to care for kids in ways some adults can't. Why not turn that into something for you and Amari?" At first, I hesitated. The idea of running a daycare sounded overwhelming, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt right. It wasn't just about money. It was about purpose, about reclaiming what had been stolen from me. I started small, taking in a few neighborhood kids while Amari played alongside them. Seeing their laughter fill the house brought a light I hadn't realized I'd been missing. It wasn't the love of my parents I'd been denied, but it was love I could give and receive freely. One evening, after dinner, Amari disappeared into her room for a while. She returned holding a drawing, her little hands shaking with excitement. I took it from her and saw a family picture. 2 stick figures, hand in hand, smiling. No extra faces. No complicated lines. Just her and me, bright smiles radiating from the page. I felt a lump in my throat. "This is beautiful, baby," I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She beamed up at me, eyes shining with pride. "That's us, Mommy. That's our family," she said. I smiled, a warm, quiet smile that reached deep into my chest. "Yes, that's all the family we need," I whispered, holding her close. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from guilt, free from manipulation, free from the constant worry that my love and care weren't enough. My daughter and I had each other, and that was enough. The weight of my parents' betrayal no longer dictated how I lived or how I loved. Evenings became our time. We cooked together, painted, read stories, and sometimes just sat in the quiet, listening to the world outside. Life wasn't perfect, and the scars of the past remained, but they no longer controlled us. Instead, they reminded me of how far we had come, of the strength we had found in each other. As I tucked Amari into bed that night, I looked around our little apartment, filled with toys, drawings, and the faint scent of dinner still lingering. The quiet, steady strength that had grown inside me felt warm and undeniable. We hadn't forgiven the past, but we had reclaimed our peace. And that, I realized, was more powerful than anything I could have imagined. Do you think Zahira made the right choice by cutting her parents out of her life? Or should she have tried to make peace with them? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And if you connect with stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.